You're not only competing on price and location, you're competing digitally. And I think people fail to realize that there's a big competition. There's a big battle when it comes to SEO. And people find dispensaries the same way they find Italian restaurants now. You pick up your phone and you type it in and you see what's close to you. If you're not popping up, chances of you finding that customer are very slim. There's a big digital build here too. It's very important to get that going.
Welcome to How to Flourish in Cannabis. I'm your host, Brian Weber. Our topic today, a step-by-step timeline for opening up cannabis operations. How to Flourish in Cannabis is an educational focus show with experienced leaders in regulated cannabis. Our guests have a wide range of industry experience in law, insurance, and real estate. And today, I brought an expert on about cannabis operations and technology. There's no pitches here. This is designed to be a masterclass in regulated cannabis. How to Flourish in Cannabis is our effort to educate and elevate. I'm so happy to have Brian Mayfield on today from MJstack. Brian's been in the industry for about 7 years, and he's been running MJstack for the past 4 years. And, whenever I need a reference or some intel or some information on anything to deal with cannabis, Brian's my first call. So, Brian, thanks for coming on today.
Appreciate the intro. MJstack. We do cannabis consulting. So I've been in the trenches here in the cannabis industry doing this alongside my business partner, Adam Benko. We both have very similar career trajectories. So it's funny when somebody asks, what's your background? Well, we both kind of just answer the exact same way. We come from the enterprise software world where we were selling digital transformation to Fortune 500 for years before a couple colleagues brought us into the cannabis world saying, hey, there's this cannabis startup company you got to come work for. We were both like, I don't know, we're feeling pretty good where we're at. I don't know if we want to make that leap. And then the second we actually did, our old company got bought out and we'd made that leap. I haven't turned back. I love this industry. It's super fun. The startup world is fun, so just being a part of that and recognizing the opportunity you're growing while you're helping other people grow. It's really cool. And that's why we started MJstack 4 years ago after some time at that cannabis startup who does cannabis specific point of sale.
And now you guys handle like the full gamut. So it's POS, it could be ERP systems, it could be payment systems, it could be e-commerce, and also even some professional services as well for accountants, consultants, lawyers, like the full gamut. I love the services that you offer because you're very upfront about like how we do this. Conversations with you, it's like there's different technology sets for different markets and for different people and for different operators. And you understand the bigger picture and how all these pieces fit together. And, like in our conversations, I wanted to have you on today of like, it's hard to know what to do first if you're new in this industry. And especially with licensing in this industry, people know who you are. People know that you're applying for a license and you're just getting bombarded by inbound. As a dispensary operator or any other like cultivation, manufacturing, or whatever else that you're operating, you are getting bombarded by inbound. And to have a framework to help organize those thoughts and help organize those decision makings and not get, kind of like over your skis too early and make sure that you're making those decisions that are supporting everything in the right order. I wanted to have you on today to talk about those things. So thanks for joining.
Yeah, no, it's a lot, but that's what makes it fun for us, but very challenging for the operator. It's such a nuanced industry with everything that goes into starting an operation, starting a business in cannabis. Everything's different from state by state, regulations, license type. The entire suite of solutions that you need to run a business can change, from your neighbor 30 miles away. It's wild, but it creates quite a challenge. And that's why we started this to help people navigate that. And it's like I said, it's fun for us because it's like a puzzle, but not so fun for other people who aren't used to evaluating technology.
Yeah, in a very systemized way. Yeah.
Sure. They get in to do something that they feel passionate about, which is starting a cannabis business, not evaluating solutions. And so quickly becomes overwhelming.
So let's get into it. So we're going to have 5 points today, and it's all timeline based as you're going through operations. These are a little bit more dispensary focused operations, but they also could be applied toward, upstream if you're doing cultivation, manufacturing as well. There's a certain order of being able to do these things and a timeline for them. So We'll start out pre-licensing. So you have this idea, you want to start this company. What are some of the initial kind of issues and things that you should be considering from like a pre-licensing point of view? Like you want to start this cannabis company. What's some of our first phone calls and first thoughts on dealing with different vendors?
Yeah, I mean, the first steps here are going to be basically the first steps you would have to go through for any business, is let's get the license for this business. And that in itself is a giant hurdle. It's very different market by market. Some markets it's, hey, $2,500 and, go knock on our door and we'll give you one. In other markets, it's wait 3 years. You have to have $1 million in capital. It's crazy what some of these folks have to jump through depending on the market. But that's obviously step number one. You can't operate without a license. You have to get a bank that will support a cannabis business. You have to talk to an accountant. These are things that you typically have to do in any business. But those are definitely the core. Okay, you're getting started. Focus there.
So there's those core professional services like legal, accounting, like banking, like those kind of things, and maybe a consultant for application writing as well. Like that's that's your three, right?
Absolutely. And this is an area where, we have so many stories here where people get ahead of themselves and say, well, you need to really, you need these things before you can do anything else. But they get so excited, and then they want to talk to different folks and they'll get in with a consultant who's already talking about technology and how they're going to run this and that. It's like, let's pump the brakes, putting the cart before the horse here a little bit. So this is an area where we basically just recommend just focus, do what you need to do to get that license, get the bank, get the account, and, working and set up your business the right way.
Any recommendation for people that are starting out in this phase? Because like it is state by state. So, like it can vary. Obviously, it varies very different in New York or, established markets and also new markets, emerging markets like, like here in New Jersey or Maryland or, even Minnesota is like starting to trickle through right now. What are some like actionable advice that you would recommend to someone who's like, let's just focus maybe on some newer markets that people are going through this for the first time. What do you think there?
Yeah, I would talk to somebody who understands licensing, a consultant, a lawyer in your market. Again, everything's state specific. So, the state of New Jersey, for example, will release what you need to do, hopefully, on their website. Sometimes communication isn't that great, or the state of Missouri will, post what the process will be or what it will look like. And these things start to come out over time. So it's kind of staying on top of that, understanding what the guidelines are, what you need to do. But also, I always recommend talking to somebody who does know this, who has done this in other markets or understands how to work with the state cannabis boards.
So experience matters, like just to say it explicitly. Yeah, there was a post on LinkedIn the other day about like the cannabis industry being like very ripe for con artists because there's a huge sense of urgency. There's, like uncertainty and unregulation or mystery regulations or unclarity in these regulations. And it's ripe for that because there's a lot of confusion about this. But like, I think the best piece of advice is actually speaking to people who've been successful in this and doing it before.
Right. Get recommendations too. Like seriously, I can't stress that enough because like you're saying, it is ripe for con artists. Everybody in this new emerging industry of ours can be an expert. They can just call themselves an expert and it's so new. Who's going to be out there, with a list saying, nope, this guy's not on the list. This girl's not on the list. It's tough. But watch out for that because I've seen a lot of folks pay a lot of money to people who just kind of try to figure it out with them and say, well, I could have done that and saved, the $20,000, $30,000 that might have cost me.
So check references then, prior experience on all these things.
Definitely.
That's your pre-licensing story. You're getting like just the core vendors in place, accountants, lawyers, application writers, consultants, those kind of things. And I saw in, like in the notes that we talked about pre-show is like not signing up for anything too early. Like you can get LOIs for software if you need to have that as part of the application. You don't need to sign for anything too early.
Yes, do not. I can't recommend that enough. Don't sign contracts until you have that license because you're just going to, bleed capital at that point and you don't want to do that.
Yeah, and definitely see the other show that we have on here is with Yaro Kubrin about real estate. So definitely check that episode out. He had a ton of information on real estate in and of itself. So, okay, so we're moving along. Timelines are rolling. You get your license. Now we're at a post-licensing level. We have a provisional license. You might need some building stuff. You might need some branding. You might need some other things there. Where does this process come into phase, and what vendors are we looking at here?
This is how you build it, right? So it's going to vary depending on who you're talking to. Some people are, leasing a property. Some people have bought one outright, need to build it from the ground up. Some folks have, a spot ready to go. They just need to put some final touches on. So it's, again, it's all shapes and sizes, but this is the phase where you're actually putting your vision into blueprints and you're getting this contracted out. You're shopping this around, you're figuring out what it's going to look like, what you need. And again, this is a big spot for compliance and regulation too, depending on which market you're in, where your city, your town, you're going to have to build it a certain way. You're going to have to make sure that you're passing these inspections, getting the permitting, doing all of those things. So again, very focused stage. You want to make sure that you're building it out the right way. This is another area people tend to get ahead of themselves. But I would also share too a story. We talked to a lot of folks, talked to one recently who basically said, okay, I'm going to be AWOL for 3 months. I'm going to be gone because I'm focused. I'm getting the contractors. I'm going to start breaking ground on this. And I don't want to talk to any vendors. And my answer was, fantastic. I'll talk to you in 3 months. I'm glad you have that outlook. I don't want you to talk to vendors because you're just going to get overwhelmed. You need to focus, get this thing up and running. So again, these first 2 stages are very focused. Don't get ahead of yourself phases.
So this is putting like some of the vendors that you may have talked to, like branding is a big one, making sure that your brand looks great. Like there's a visual identity to that. You might be looking for payroll. You might be looking for insurance. Obviously, you're dealing with construction, but also like security professionals that tend to work in this industry and, architects that have worked or can advise on, whatever your facility is for design. Because you might have built a bunch of retail before, but dispensaries are different. Or you might have built some cultivation before, but, cannabis grows are different. You might have built some manufacturing before, but depending upon the processes you're using, there's different site requirements for those as well. So like it's similar, but different.
Right. And it's probably a good time for me to talk about this too. I think it's very important. I always talk about this. It's really important to talk to professional service providers who have a track record of working in the cannabis space. Because if you don't, they're not going to fully understand the compliance, the regulations in your area. I mean, they'll try, but again, you're paying for their time, you're paying for this, and they're learning with you. It goes back to phase 1 too, when you're talking to an accountant. I mean, these folks knowing the cannabis space goes a long way to helping you do it the right way. And that's a really good thing to stress here in the first couple phases. It helps a lot.
Is there ever a reason you'd want to hire somebody that has not worked in the cannabis industry prior, now that we're a decade plus into legalization across this country?
That's tough. That's a tough answer because there are some areas, again, where it doesn't matter as much. For example, a design from somebody who's helping you with your branding, that's roughly the same. Even some SEO services, there are some nuances that do help, it being cannabis specific, because especially on the marketing front where you have another, whole set of guidelines and rules and everything. But for the most part, I tend to recommend only cannabis specific folks because it really does help. Even a year or 2 of experience in this industry, and you're a veteran. This industry moves fast. You're aware of that.
Yeah, that first year you do learn a lot. I know John Shute. I just did a recording with him for Puff Creative. I know he would definitely recommend only talking to experienced cannabis marketing people because they know the tech stacks and they know the pros and cons of all those and nuances for branding for cannabis and there's a lot of issues with Google and other social media websites and advertising. So I guess really experience matters.
And that's why I kind of drew the line at design, because I was just like, well, yeah, because then like John would tell you firsthand, you do need to know the tech stacks.
Well, a contractor can build a building, but, having it, architected by somebody who knows how to do dispensaries or cultivation, that's like a very specific one. They don't need to have to build a dispensary before, but as long as they can follow blueprints and have done things before, it's there.
And I get questions all the time like, oh, we're supposed to have a product cage here and we're supposed to do this and that. And I'm like, yes, that's why you need to talk to a cannabis specific or somebody who at least knows how to interpret the cannabis laws and regulations and get you set up for that final inspection.
So moving along now, we're, post licensing, but now we're moving into like construction phase. And whether that's a lease and you're doing your own build out, or it's actually a new build and you're actually doing the build out for that facility and the provisioning, Where are we at here with different vendors that you'd recommend bringing in at this time frame as you're starting to like flush out and execute on the design?
So this is where a lot of implementation happens, actual hardware. You've already talked to folks who are going to be doing your general contracting, and they're getting to work. They're building that out if that's what you need. You're actually implementing the interior design, your blueprint for how the hardware in your store, your networking is all coming together, your security plan. This is where all of those blueprints come together and you're putting it all into action. And this could include things, I mentioned security. You're talking, cameras. And again, that's state specific when it comes to regulations and everything, making sure that you have what they need you to have, what they're requiring. But even physical things like, where's your ATM going? Where are your checkout stations going to go? You don't need to decide who's powering that necessarily, but you need to decide, okay, where are things going to go? How's your general flow going to go for this? What's your customer experience going to look like when they enter and exit, and things like that. Same thing for cultivators and manufacturers. You need to understand the daily workflow and everything of your employees, of how things are going to go within the operation, and understand where the hardware and equipment, everything is coming together during this phase.
Brian, any interesting stories that you can share from like maybe some bad examples of this?
Well, this is the easiest spot for us to I wouldn't say lose clients. We'll lose them mentally because they start to go crazy in this phase, because you're having all of this happening at once. Some folks have this really big build. They have interior designers. They have people coming in. I've been on the phone with somebody, and they're talking to their window person that just came in. Their security guys in the corner, and they're like, "Hey, can you hold on? Can you hold on?" And they're just going crazy because they have all of these things happening at once in this phase. And there are some stories where, this goes wrong because they start to look ahead. And again, that's why we really try to keep people organized, because they start to take sales calls for all of the technology and software. And right now it's like, hey, just focus on the build. This is definitely the biggest phase where the heads start to spin and people get a little overwhelmed. I tend to meet people in this phase and they're like, where were you 3 months ago? So it's a fun phase, but hopefully I can get a hold of folks at this time and just say, hey, let's pump the brakes. Let's make, a plan.
Let's take a breath. There. So that's good advice. So like, take a breath, focus, be present, I guess is really the thing that you're saying. But like, also I'm imagining right here, you being like the operator being organized really helps. So you have your construction items, like what you're implementing right now, but also what's next as well.
Yeah. And you're also simultaneously in the construction phase, it doesn't have to be physical construction. You're also building your brand. You're also creating your digital presence, and how that's going to look. You're building the website. You're doing things that you want to start getting going a few months before opening. Some of those digital things take time. You want to build your Google My Business page, and you want to start your SEO if you can, and things like that. So there's a lot going on.
And your community engagement and, like getting out there.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how are you acquiring customers is a big part of this. Yeah.
I think the reality, it's funny. I've talked to a number of operators and they're like, oh, people aren't just knocking down our door to come in, like, and especially in more established markets, as they're opening up, like you got to win that business. You got to earn that business. You got to be a differentiator. It's not like you're the only dispensary, in your county anymore. It's, you might have a few doors down the street.
Yeah, you're not only competing on price and location, you're competing digitally. And I think people fail to realize that, there's a big competition. There's a big battle when it comes to, SEO. And, people find dispensaries the same way they find Italian restaurants now. You pick up your phone and you type it in and you see what's close to you. If you're not popping up, it's chances of you finding that customer very slim. There's a big digital build here too that makes it's very important to get that going.
Which leads us into our next point. It's really like the tech stack building. And I know this is like the heart of like where the genesis of MJstack came from, but like there's a lot of very important decisions that are going to affect your dispensary's success, at least initially, with the tech stack build. So let's like really kind of deep dive on this one. So
Yeah, this is the big one for us. So this is basically what we got started to help. This is the tech. This is your tech stack. There are some pieces that go into this from the few stages before, but for the most part, we try to tell folks to punt this as far down the road as they can, because every piece of software in this industry is a startup, just like you are. It's this whole industry is powered by startup technology. You can't use the same systems that you can use in traditional retail. So you have startup companies powering your business, and they all have to integrate to each other. They all have to play nice. They have to integrate, depending on the technology, into the state reporting system. They have to keep you compliant. There's all kinds of factors that go into this. And because they're all startups, all of that might change by the time you open your doors. So we try to say, punt this as far down the road as you can, have those sales calls at the end and put that together. Because if you sign up for something, let's say 12 months prior to opening your doors, well, that entire tech stack might be obsolete by the time you open your doors, because it might have gotten acquired. Those integrations no longer exist because those companies aren't playing nice together anymore. The regulations have changed in your market.
Which happens a lot more than you think.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And the regulations changing happens nonstop. I mean, these cannabis boards are flying by the seat of their pants too. And they're sometimes just changing small little regulations, and they don't realize how that impacts a lot of the technologies that support these operators. And sometimes it just means you can't use this certain piece of technology because there's a new regulation. It's going to take them 6 months to code that in. So there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah, no, I mean, here at Flourish, like regulation changes, and we got to change a whole label, and we got to get different, elements on a label, or, consumption require. I mean, there's a billion things. I literally see all these support tickets coming in for all these regulation changes, and it's a big effect on the software and development time, and relabeling things and repackaging things and product things. It's, these are very impactful things. So you had a very interesting story that you shared with me a little bit before recording today, but as a customer in Oklahoma.
Oh, right. Yeah. So this is an interesting story, but it's not that unique, surprisingly. We often tell folks to, we take budget into account always when we're recommending technology stacks, what they can and can't spend, and we'll build what they need to be compliant with the money that they have, and make it all work. Now, some folks do what this operator did, where they signed up with weed maps. And, in Oklahoma, weed maps is very prevalent. It's, it makes sense to be on weed maps. I didn't know if this part made a ton of sense, which they were flying to Weed Maps headquarters once a year, like every November or so, and taking a duffel bag of $80,000 in cash for their yearly Weed Maps subscription.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought they were joking. And no, they had to cancel a meeting because they were getting on a plane with the duffel bag full of cash to bring it to Weed Maps headquarters.
One, how do you get that for security? Two, it must smell like weed. Just adds to the equation right there. And then three, like they're really renting their customers, because as soon as that weed maps goes away, like what are you doing on the back end to be able to fulfill that? So that's a big investment.
Well, that's one of those ones, we hear something like that and it opens up an entire bag of questions. First off, sounds like you don't have a cannabis specific bank. You need to get that going. That's dangerous. Certain things like that strike first. And then, maybe your money, if it's $80,000 a year, you might be better off splitting that up. If you want to stay on weed maps, sure, you can still devote resources to weed maps. But with $80,000, you can probably get organic SEO going. You can have your own online e-commerce, which they didn't have any of that. There's a lot of misinformation, but it's because there's a lot of stuff online, and there's a lot of things people just Google best point of sale, or how do I sell this, or, what the best software is. That stuff's all pay to play, so if you're getting all your information from online resources or salespeople, you might get stuck in something that's not a really great setup for your business. It's not really a good fit.
You had mentioned something, before our call. It's a very simple thing, but a great reminder. Salespeople are there to sell.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've been in sales since I graduated college, which was a long time ago now, but I've been in sales for a very long time. So it's funny. My business partner and I, we refer to ourselves as recovered salespeople because we're doing consulting now. We always laugh about that. We know sales better than most people we know. And we understand all these little tricks and things to get somebody to sign up. There's always a promo that's expiring at the end of this month and you have to lock it in right now. And there's all kinds of things like that. That deal will exist later. I always tell people, do things on your terms and consider the source of the information you're getting. I don't think that salesperson means, any kind of ill intent there, but they are motivated by one product, one quota, and that's sales. That's sales, so consider your source.
Yep. And that's sales. So just remembering that salespeople are there to sell, and also just a source of truth. Like a lot of blogs and a lot of articles are definitely written by different companies that are paying to be able to write those articles and sponsor those articles and generate that SEO. So there's an opinion of that one, and it might not always be in your best interest to do that. Which honestly gets us into the last one. It's like you're open now. Your dispensary is open. Your cultivation, your manufacturing, your open. Operational review. How are things working?
Yeah, so this is a fun one for us because we can kind of, especially if we've worked with somebody from the beginning, right? Because we can kind of see how everything that we built with this customer is going. But this is a really, really important time to look back. Like, okay, the chaos is over. You've been open. A lot of people consider the chaos still ongoing even after they're open, but that's usually a good thing if there's just means you're busy. But this is a really good part to just kind of stop and look back, say, how are things working? How is my technology stack working? Where can I, maybe save money, boost efficiency, save time, or biggest one, boost revenue. This is the biggest point where people look and they say, okay, things are going well or things aren't going well. Who knows? Hopefully it's well. And they look back and they say, okay, what can we do to drive more customers? How can we boost revenue? And these are things that maybe you couldn't have afforded before you started. Maybe you were already over budget. It happens all the time. And you can look back and say, we have revenue coming in the door. What can we do now to boost that?
Yeah. What's working? What's not working? Do we tweak it? Do we kill it? Do we boost it? Like those kind of items.
And again, it's an industry powered by startups. You're constantly going to be reevaluating what you've signed up for because there are going to be new options. There's going to be options that receive, who knows, a big chunk of funding and have a new development team and all these integrations. And it might be a better fit for you, but these are things that you can start to evaluate once you've been open and you see how things are working firsthand. It's a really important spot.
Yeah. What was that? You were telling me something about a Massachusetts brand before the show started.
Yeah. So we have a partner and friend now up in Massachusetts. I didn't ask him, so I won't name drop him here, but basically big brand. A lot of people know this brand and this guy, and he inbounded to us and we were chatting and hopped on the call. And I think the first 10 minutes of the call were kind of funny because, he was giving his background and he's like, I know everything you guys do. I've been doing this forever. I think it's cool what you're doing. And I just wanted to hear it from you, like how you guys are approaching this. Sounds like it's what I do. So, kind of like a high five. We're going to move on. I know everything I'm doing. And I took that as a challenge personally. I was like, I'm going to find something. I'm going to find something that they don't know. And yeah, it throughout the call, I think 10 more minutes went by. We're chatting about this and I start just kind of leading down certain paths. So what are you doing for this? How are you boosting this? And inevitably we did. We found two solutions that helped boost revenue, customer acquisition, and then one of them actually helped save costs for the supplies that they were stocking and everything like that. And by the end of the call, he's like, can you send those two intros for me? And he signed up for those solutions the next week. And, I felt very proud of myself in that moment. Since then, I always use that as an example because even if you think you know everything, there's always going to be something. Just talk to people, pick the brains of your neighbors, talk to professionals.
So I guess the big action item of this one is like always be learning. It is I mean, like I work in, Flourish is a tech company in this industry. It is constantly evolving month to month. But like you're never going to know it all. It is always evolving. Talk to people that are in your same space and talk to people who are knowledgeable about all this. I mean, that's really the best thing that you can do is just get out there, talk, and actually understand their point of view and where they're coming from as well. Might be salespeople, might be consultants, might be fellow people in your same point of view. And, there's a understanding that background is actually extremely important to knowing what you're getting here.
Right. And it doesn't hurt to, back to salespeople. It doesn't hurt to talk to salespeople. I think it helps, but you have to know, you have to think about that. You have to consider that always, no matter who you're talking to. Consider the source. What's their motivation for saying the things that they're saying? If you talk to 6 competing products, salespeople, they're all going to be the best. Shocker. But they're all going to be the best. So always reevaluate, always ask.
It is a great overview. It's a very systematic, process that we have here. Like you're just like started pre-licensing, you're hitting the basic core financial people, core business operational people to get things off the ground. Post-licensing, starting to get some of those constructions, those timely vendors together, your brand, your websites, your digital advertising, your digital presence, going through into construction. Stay focused. Start executing on those elements that you need to do right now. But being mindful of like your tech stack solutions starting to come and maybe doing those a few months before operation to make sure you're getting the right timely information of what's working together. And after you open, it's a constant operational review. What's working? What's not working? Do we boost it? Do we modify it? Do we kill it? And keep going from there. So it's a nonstop process, but as is running a business, So
yeah, and you know that. I mean, but this is as 1,000-foot view as you can get to, because every single one of these steps includes, a suite of products you need to evaluate and all kinds of different solutions. So obviously, we need a much longer podcast for that.
It's a giant Google sheet. I can assure you of that.
Yeah, we don't want to put people to sleep here.
And that leads me into like, I'd love to see some ideas for a next show with Brian and team, because we can go and double click on each one of these and even do a whole show on POS or a whole show on e-commerce and a whole show on advertising. Leave some, reviews in the comments. And obviously, if you've watched this far, subscribing and a thumbs up helps more than you can imagine. And we really appreciate that. Brian, thanks for being on. It's total thumbs up right here as well, but definitely in the YouTube. Brian, how could listeners connect with you in the team at MJstack? What's the best way to reach out to you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we're active on LinkedIn. Brian Mayfield, Adam Banco is my counterpart. We're the owners, but we still do all the consultations. So our team drives everything through us. So find us there. MJstack is the name of the company, no spaces. Or you can email us, hello@mjstack.com, brian@mjstack.com. We're very responsive. So those are probably the easiest ways.
You guys have been a great asset to me in like little areas I just don't have that much, dealing with partnerships here at Flourish, little areas I don't have expertise on. It's been great to open up some doors and also some people that have been good to you as well in the past. I do find in cannabis, you do build a reputation and that will follow with you. And it's important to work with people that have been good stewards of that reputation for a long time. It really does help.
Reputation's everything in these new industries. Word of mouth is everything. So yeah, you continue to do your job right and you'll continue to be rewarded. That's how we kind of look at it.
Couldn't leave it on better notes, Brian. Thanks for your time today and appreciate sharing some knowledge with our community here. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brian.